Your mic's muted.
Can you hear me okay, Nicole? Foxy.
YouTube's good. Test YouTube audio.
Send something like just into WebEx. Test. Awesome. And I'm gonna go here. 829 You got it. Okay. Oops. Yep. This one. Dang, that's totally okay.
Caller on the line.
Test.
526, no pressure, okay? T-minus 4 minutes. Looking good, as always. Hello. That was a quote like. Oh, I don't think I've gone there in 2 weeks.
Well, go check it. Today I went in to see Albert because he hasn't been there since, today was his first day back since Saturday last week. And I'm like, so how's it going? Because the cooler is currently the reefer truck in the parking lot, right? And he's like, well, I haven't been able to get into the reefer truck all day. And I saw him at like 1 o'clock today. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, it was pulled out of the bay. There's no access. And they've had trucks coming and going in the main bay. He's like, I've been dealing with the product you ordered, but I have no idea what my old stuff is. So he was gonna be working late today. Yeah. Well, and he gave me crap. He said I totally ordered way too much stuff. So I'm like, but you're giving me crap, but you haven't seen what's in the cooler.
If you're excited right now, I'm sorry. Hello, Westerly News. Welcome. How are
been doing?
We like the live person.
Right? Just make that live. Just make it up as you go. She won the Yeah. Move us down.
She's like, oh, I'm really nervous. I'm like, wait,
Hey, Nora, I owe you an email. I'm gonna get to it.
Will we get there for a while? Will you there for the course? Or you just checked up on them?
I just checked off.
Took a couple pictures? I owe you money, right? You gonna send me an invoice?
Sent an invoice.
You did?
Trudy.
Oh, to Trudy, okay, sure.
That's the right person. Yeah, don't send it to the one.
No, thanks, man, that was good.
14.
That's good. Awesome. Yeah, she came in and she finished early, which I told her. I said, they say we'll finish at 4, it's gonna finish at 2:30. And then she would, I dropped mine off at my mom's and she was thinking Mom was coming. She's coming.
Well, it's because they were all like, they've all driven them before, so they were easy.
1 minute, we're gonna be ready to go? We're ready to go? Okay, perfect.
Julian's like, we're ready.
Julian, give me the second, we are ready.
Can you hear me, Julian?
Can you hear all the counselors? You're all good?
Can you hear me?
Mike's on.
Should I do a test?
He doesn't have his, yeah, give it a test, starting with council, with
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
test, test.
Test, test.
Ah, whatever.
Perfect. Okay. Alrighty. 3 minutes? I got 1 minute.
Can you take your mask off and say it louder? Sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah, there's nobody in the room. It's gonna turn the PA system down so the humming's down so you can be able to hear
Okay,
yourself.
copy that.
Did I do okay?
Apparently I'm heard.
Okay, we're good. See you 2 minutes. Welcome, welcome. Peter's always kind of the back row kind of guy. Barb will be there. Thank you, Barb. Welcome. How you been doing? How's your summer going?
Really well,
Good.
for considering. Was someone here? Yeah. Oh, we tried to listen to something down. Such a good.
Oh, you couldn't hear yesterday?
No sound.
Good. No, you could.
And Lily had said that too, but I just assumed it was just her telephone.
She couldn't hear it. Oh, she
But
couldn't hear it.
YouTube, and then it said to link towards Zoom. What do I got? 1 minute? Oh, I don't have that.
I don't have
Did you give it to me?
Jessica?
Don't be like that. We're just fortunate I'm here.
I don't have one. I don't have one.
Does everybody have this link?
You must.
Agenda item?
Is that the one that was just sent? It was electronic. We got the electronic version.
I got one and received one today.
Yeah. Yesterday.
Late
Yeah, if you
special
don't mind.
agenda I got sent
Yeah.
yesterday.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's it.
Nicole, are we showtime? We are? Okay, perfect. Okay, everyone? Welcome, and I just wish to call to order the special meeting of council at 5:30 on August 13th. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet First Nation on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Notice of video recording. Audience members, delegates, and public hearing participants are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube. They are also advised that this meeting is being conducted via Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. We do have one late item.
We do. We have a letter from Barbara Schramm of the Wild Pacific Trail Society regarding 796 Marine Drive. I will read this into the record at the appropriate time. We also have three late items, three late letters. One from Barbara Schramm at the Wild Pacific Trail Society regarding 221 Monado Road. Another from Mr. and Miss Eve Tink from regarding 221 Monado. And another from Mr. Fortune regarding 221 Monado. They will also be read at the appropriate time.
Okay. Looking for approval of the agenda with those late items.
I'll move the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I declare the public hearing for the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw numbers 1267, 2020, 1244, 2019, and 1256, 2019 open. Please note that this is also an opportunity to provide input on temporary use permit, TUP 19-01, and development variance permit, DVP 1902. The notice of public hearing has been advertised and is available at the Manager of Corporate Services table with a copy of the rules that will govern this public hearing. Council will listen to public input on the matters addressed in the notice of the public hearing. Rules governing public hearings. As provided for in the Local Government Act, the Council is required to hold a public hearing before adopting an official community plan, bylaw, zoning bylaw, or zoning bylaw amendments. At a public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in property affected by the proposed bylaws shall be given an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions on matters contained in the bylaw. Council may consider amending the bylaws based on the public input received at today's public hearing. At a public hearing, the Council is under no obligation to enter into a debate on any issue. The purpose of a hearing is to hear public input about the bylaws. You will have as much time to address Council as you need, as long as your comments are focused on the bylaws which are subject of this public hearing. Following the public hearing, Council will not accept further communications or presentations from the public or the applicants respecting the bylaws. Please maintain physical distancing. I have a few comments on procedures for addressing Council. To maintain order and to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, our rules of procedure are as follows. If you're watching the live stream on YouTube, please note there will be up to a 60-second delay in the live stream. Information about how to participate in this meeting is available on the public hearing and bylaws notice page on ucluelet.ca. Members of public are attending this public hearing in person and by Zoom. We'll alternate between the Zoom and in-person participants and clean the microphone. The in-person participants will speak first. If you're participating by Zoom, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. You can raise your hand by clicking on the Raise Your Hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom window or pressing *9 if you are dialing in. When it's your turn to speak, staff will unmute you and Zoom will indicate that you have been unmuted. If you're participating in person, please proceed to the podium to speak. Maintain physical distancing while waiting in line. Please begin by stating your name, address. If you are speaking on behalf of an organization or another person, please identify the name and address of that organization or person. If you are speaking from a prepared remarks, we would appreciate a copy. To maintain an atmosphere that is respectful of all points of view, it is important for the audience to refrain from applying and cheering for speakers. After everyone has spoken once, those wishing to speak again will have an opportunity. Council members may ask questions of speakers or staff to clarify what has been said. However, this is not an opportunity for debate. The public hearing will proceed as follows. Staff will provide an overview of the bylaw and notice. The applicants will be given an opportunity to address council. Staff will read any unpublished correspondence related to the bylaw, and we will open the floor for public comments. Item 6.3, this item of business is District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1267-2020. This bylaw relates to the property at 796 Marine Drive. I now invite the Manager of Community Planning to provide an overview of the bylaw.
So I would note before I begin that we do have a copy of the zoning and official community plan bylaws here for reference for members of the public should they wish to refer to them during the hearing. So to start with here on this item, 796 Marine Drive and bylaw number 1267. Briefly, the owners of the property at 796 Marine Drive are seeking to allow 2 detached guest cottages instead of 2 attached vacation rental suites, plus the addition of a secondary suite. As noted on the image on the screen, the subject property is within a neighborhood that has a large component of vacation rental or VR1 and guest house zoned properties, essentially on the west side of Marine Drive, and some large residential properties across the road. The subject property, maybe we could go to the next slide, please, it's a large property, mostly forested, mature trees to the rear of the property, and the Wild Pacific Trail runs parallel to the rear of the property in a district park corridor. So essentially, if approved, the resulting development on the property would include, I will just point out, the house and secondary suite, which would be long-term residence, and then 2 guest houses for short-term accommodation at the rear of the property. And so again, for anyone who's watching on camera, that would be the house and suite at the sort of towards Marine Drive, and then 2 guest cottages towards the rear of the property to the west. So in a nutshell, the bylaw that's being considered as the subject of this public hearing is zoning amendment bylaw number 1267-2020. And in general terms, the purpose of this bylaw is to amend the zoning bylaw number 1160-2013 by first changing the zoning designation of the property at 796 Marine Drive from VR1 vacation rental to GH or guest house zoning designation. And then 2, to make an amendment that despite section GH 1.1 of the zoning bylaw to allow a secondary suite and to remove the guest house as a permitted use on 796 Marine Drive. And 3rd, replacing the subsection 405.2, subsection 1, subsection C, with the following, which would really read that guest cottages are only permitted by the new section C, which reads, as accessory to a permanent residential use and administered by the full-time and present resident occupying the principal single-family dwelling or guest house.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I now invite the applicants to address council. Are they online?
Calling webinar attendance. Do we have an applicant online?
I believe we do. I'm just going to unmute them.
Hello, you are able to talk. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that the planner just detailed sort of what we're asking for. When you get into naming all the zones and subsections, it sounds fairly complicated. Mostly our idea behind it was just that instead of having one really big house that would have the vacation rentals attached, we felt that it would be a nicer experience for everyone on the property to have a little bit more privacy, and also by being able to build smaller buildings, we could tuck them into the landscape and keep more of the big trees on the property, which that we really like. So instead of having two attached vacation rentals, that's what was kind of what gave us the idea for the detached, just asking for them to be detached instead. And then also, I had a cover letter to the development proposal, but in short, my partner comes from a part of England originally that has kind of similar issues with the Ucluelet Casino area in terms of it being hard for local people to find long-term residents. That's why we thought, given that it is a bigger property, that having a long-term, like a designated long-term suite might help with that, contribute towards a solution to that. So I also just wanted to say, I don't know if my email came through this afternoon or not. We were originally excited about being able to provide really easy access from one of the guest cottages that we're going to make as a handicap accessible cottage to the Pacific Trail, and it never occurred to us that, it would be setting a precedent to break down that buffer between private residences and the trail. So we appreciated the thoughtful comments from the Trail Society, and we would certainly be happy to amend the development application to take that walkway out and instead invite any handicapped guests to access the trail via public access point instead. And I'm happy to answer any other questions, but I don't think I've kind of covered all the basics there.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Any questions from any councillors? Okay. Now invite staff to read any unpublished correspondence related to this bylaw.
There's one unpublished correspondence. It is from the Wild Pacific Trail Society. It's sent August 11th, 2020. And the reline is 796 Marine Drive, Ucluelet, rezoning application public hearing. The Wild Pacific Trail Society would like to draw attention to the proposed path leading from requested guest cottages at 796 Marine Drive through the buffer zone in what appears to be a permanent connection to the Wild Pacific Trail. The proposed trail on this rezoning application suggests a wheelchair-friendly access point across trail park land. This access would degrade the natural wild space surrounding the trail and sets a precedent for access from any property sharing a border with the trail. We would like to request that Council does not imply approval for or an obligation to modify district park space surrounding the trail to accommodate private access points. The Trail Society hopes as neighborhoods expand, we can work together to keep the wild in the Wild Pacific Trail. The trail can continue as a World Heritage attraction and a priceless benefit to local communities if we cooperate together to preserve what nature has evolved on this special coastline. Neighborhoods should, of course, share public access points to the trail with appropriate maps for orientation at planned locations. The trail is a primary focus for us all. We appreciate what looks like tree protection and small building footprints on the proposal. Bravo. Respectfully, Barbara Schramm, Wild Pacific Trail Society. And then there's a mission statement from WPTS to promote and protect a spectacular coastal trail network where the temperate rainforest meets the ocean, that is accessible to everyone and showcases the natural and cultural treasures of the Ucluelet Peninsula. And if any viewers at home would like to see, so this is me speaking now, not Ms. Schramm. If any viewers at home would like to read this, it is in our late special agendas on the agenda website.
Thank you. And And are there any members of the public that would like to have an opportunity to comment on this bylaw? In person? Or by Zoom? Okay. And I'll just, because you trained me last night, I will do the 60-second delay, which, oh, actually, that's a little further down, so we'll jump in ahead here. I do that sometimes. Okay, so calling for first time. Are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Please line up to the microphone. Welcome.
Barbara Schramm, Wild Pacific Trail Society. I feel like the sound gets blocked. I was very happy to hear from the property owner just now that they would withdraw that request to put in a direct access to the trail. But I would like to see something on record so that other property owners see that that history is in place, that it's not a precedent in thinking. Paths go two ways, so it's also a risk to the property owner for a very busy trail to open access to your backyard. So I really appreciate that, and appreciate everyone's time and consideration. Does the drawing change if they withdraw something? How does that work? I'm just
That'd be
curious.
a question for staff to ask. Mr. Gregg, did you get that question?
Make that noise again. Good job.
Yeah, Agony. Thanks for playing, Mr. Gregg.
Yes, one of the things that, as is noted in the earlier staff reports, is that prior to adoption of the zoning bylaw, if this goes forward, that the property owners understand that a covenant would be registered on the property, holding them to, that this development plan that they're proposing for the rezoning would be what they could develop, that it would be a matter of just removing the pathway, or noting it on that drawing that is attached to the copy of the covenant. It's actually registered, so that certainly could be done.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Okay. Calling for, are there nobody from Zoom wanting to speak yet? Okay. Second time speakers, are there any members of the public that wish to speak in person? Hearing and seeing none. Calling for a second time, any members of the public on Zoom? And calling for a third and final time, are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Hearing and seeing none. And again, are any members of the public on Zoom that wish to speak? And I will wait the 60 seconds just because.
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak, this is your final chance. Please raise your hand.
It is. It doesn't feel like that sometimes, but okay, that's 60 seconds, and there's no last minute. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Okay, off to item 6.4. This item of business is District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1244, 2019. Please note that this is also an opportunity to provide input on the temporary use permit, TUP 19-01, and development variance permit, DVP 19-02. This bylaw and permit relate to the property at 221 Monado Road. I now invite the manager of planning to provide an overview of the bylaw and permits. Welcome, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. This application for 221 Monado Road includes, as you mentioned, a few pieces. A zoning amendment to change the permitted uses on areas of the property with a future subdivision to follow those zone boundaries. And I'll describe the general terms of that bylaw amendment in a moment. Also, a development variance permit. As noted, this is an opportunity for the public to comment on the development variance permit, and as well a temporary use permit for one aspect of the development, which is around camping for seasonal employees on one portion of the property. Also, I should note that development permits for the subdivision and campground development would be future considerations for council, but the public hearing is on these other aspects. And so to get back to that, so to start with, the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1244, 2019. And maybe if we go to the next slide, please. In general terms, the purpose of this zoning amendment 1244 is to change the zoning designation of 221 Monado Road, which is Lot 286, Clayoquot District Plan VIP 79908, from RU Rural Residential, its current zoning, to areas designated as CG Campground, GH Guest House, and P1 Public Institutional, as outlined on the map that was in the notice that's in the agenda and is on the screen now. So I would just point out that council to see these areas of GH. The guest house would be the easternmost point of the land. This would be Peninsula Road down on the bottom, and then these campground areas, there are two of them that would be one parcel but split by what would be public park dedication. And the two areas of campground, maybe if we could go to the next slide, please. I think it shows it a little clearer. That in the colors here, that the lighter blue, it would be where the temporary use permit would apply for the longer term camping for seasonal employees, and that the more sort of tan colored area is for the short term camping. And what on one screen appears as kind of lemon yellow would all be park, and on the screen above, this would be the park dedication around the stream corridor and the edge of the Olson Bay. The second aspect of this is the development variance permit DVP 19-02. The owners have also asked to vary the two aspects of the zoning bylaw. The first is for the proposed campground zone area for the temporary use permit area. One portion of it, the applicant has requested to reduce the required side yard setback for a campsite to 1.5 meters, where the zoning bylaw currently requires a minimum of 7.5 meters. The campsite in question is shown on page 44 of the public hearing agenda. Or if we could advance the slide again, please. And one more. Perfect. I'll just highlight that it is this one campsite in this location is really where the variance would be requested, which again is this campsite down in this corner. The second aspect that is being requested to be varied is for the lot proposed to be the GH, the guest house, the eastern portion. For the construction of a house on the property, the applicants are requesting to increase the allowable maximum height for the principal building, which is a single-family dwelling, to 10.9 meters, where the bylaw currently indicates a maximum allowable height of 8.5 meters, and that's indicated on page 46 of the public hearing agenda. The illustration of the house is shown. And then the third aspect that council is receiving input from the public on this evening is the temporary use permit, TUP 19-01. And so the owners, again, 221 Monado Road, they've requested a temporary use permit to permit seasonal employee accommodation of up to 10 camping spaces for the lot proposed to be zoned as CG Campground. Again, it's in the area which is shown on the screen above you now. That those 10 spaces would be for that use, and just sorry, I lost my place. This change would allow camping from those 10 spaces for up to 6 months, less a day, compared to 30 days or less, which is currently allowed. The draft temporary use permit is on page 49 of the public hearing agenda, and the conditions that would apply to that permit are also listed on page 51.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I now invite the applicants to address council. Are they online?
We currently have no one online on Zoom.
Pardon me?
There is no one online
No one
currently
online.
on Zoom.
Okay. Now invite staff to read any unpublished correspondence related to the bylaw.
There are 3 items, all of which have been published in the special council meeting agenda, which is available online, but I'll read them for convenience right now. 221, the first one is from Wild Pacific Trail Society. The reline is 221 Monada Road, Ucluelet, rezoning application, public hearing. The paragraph starts, or it's from Barbara Schramm, of the president of the Wild Pacific Trail Society. It reads, the Wild Pacific Trail Society appreciates our partnerships with private landowners, district staff, council, in continuing to improve our priceless trail network. We are pleased to see the protective parkland in this application so a trail or boardwalk route can be created that works to maintain the natural landscape while restricting direct access to the open marsh. If this application is approved, it is our recommendation that links to the ancient cedar trail or paths to the marsh should not be made until an official continuous trail with barriers and view decks with railings can discourage wandering into the marsh. No dead end or temporary paths should be created which would encourage damage to the wetland. This marine nursery and wildlife haven deserve space to thrive. The Trail Society is also interested in creating educational interpretive signs for Olsen Bay properties before and after development opens public access to the unique salt marsh. There is now a photo of the sign. It indicates an individual stepping into the marsh. The title is your footprint heavier than an ATV? Question mark. You can help preserve this cove by not walking on the marsh plants or mudflats. A man exerts 4 times more ground pressure than an ATV. And then it goes on to list PSIs for different things such as mountain bikes, an elephant, army tank, 6-foot-tall man, etc. The Olsen Bay could host a short interpretive trail. So the letter goes on to say, the Olsen Bay could host a short interpretive trail similar to our Spring Cove project. This salt marsh is very vulnerable to human impacts, so the goal is to inspire people through creative education so they do not leave footprints that can take years to heal due to slow sedimentation and tidal flow. When people learn, they will want to protect what they see. The timing for trail construction should be synchronized for when development in the area would open the coastline to public access. Until then, the marsh should remain out of reach. Thank you. Together we can inspire a spectacular and responsible trail network for generations to come! Exclamation mark. The next letter is from Ted and Tracy Eftink. In their email it states, we support changing the zoning designation of 221 Monada Road to campground, guest house, public institutional. It is our opinion that this zoning would be an acceptable use in this location. We agree with and support the recommendation in the staff report to council that, mark, that temporary use be permitted for seasonal employee accommodation for up to 10 camping spaces at trial basis, in parentheses. The setback of the side yard be 7.5 meters. The 30 meters of shoreline have parkland designation. The previously damaged riparian and marine shoreline areas of the property be repaired before any further development be permitted. The principal building maximum allowable height be 8.5 meters. We would like to add that in our opinion, Mark, again, this development should provide for the Wild Pacific Trail with protected sight lines that makes its way through the area. Left in its natural state, this shoreline area will add to the value and natural beauty of the proposed development. We envision that the campground, guest house, and facilities could be a model tourism business. It could be an asset to Ucluelet if it is lower density than currently proposed, providing ample protected green space and protection for significant natural features. In the campground parcel, please consider the following: 10 long-term RV spaces, temporary permit to be reviewed, 52 short-term RV spaces, 14 tent spaces, no tent spaces within the Peninsula Road 30-meter green space covenant area. We would hope that a dock or marina, even small scale, be allowed from the mudflats shoreline in Olsen Bay. The final point is consequence of non-compliance of the guidelines set in the recommendation by the District of Ucluelet and consultants needs to be outlined. Thank you for your consideration. All the best, Ted and Tracy Evetink, Ucluelet, BC. The final letter is submitted by Mr. Mark Fortune, also of Ucluelet, BC. The reline is input regarding the zoning application to 221 Monado Road, public hearing Thursday, August 13. My concerns with the proposed development relate primarily to the infrastructure to support the proposed density of the build-out. An engineered site design needs to be submitted prior to final approval, as the current conceptual plans fall short in many places. Temporary use permit, so now he has headings. Temporary use permit, TUP 19-01. Point: the layout and details of this plan is insufficient. The detail for access road and turn around is currently not able to support our fire apparatus. This detail needs to be addressed prior to the permit moving forward. Monado Road access to Peninsula. The intersection sightlines are poor to the west. A left turn lane will be required due to proposed density of the campground. A deceleration lane will have to be incorporated on the shoulder onto Monado. Pedestrian crossing area should be moved Pedestrian crossing area should be moved location with better sight lines. Monado Road. The road will need to be built to a full municipal standard with sidewalks or trail network on both sides. The current plan has insufficient parking for Wild Pacific Trail users. There should be a dedicated parking lot. Street parking should be kept to a minimum. The parking that is shown on the artist's rendering cannot be installed as depicted and is totally inadequate at the turnaround. The turnaround at the end of Monado will require a larger radius to accommodate fire apparatus. The center should not be planted but remain a load-bearing surface of sorts. Sewer lift station. There is no indication of a sewer lift station to support the high density proposed. This station takes space that has not been accounted for in the proposed plan. The final heading is Wild Pacific Trail amenities. I believe that the future popularity of this area is being underestimated in regard to insufficient trail parking. Further development of parking amenities will have to come at the expense of the guest house lot as depicted. A parking area could be incorporated into the lookout platform area proposed at the end of Monado. This could occur on lands that have already been damaged. Respectfully submitted, Mark Fortune, Ucluelet, BC. Now I'm just going to check my emails to make sure nothing else is coming.
Perfect.
Nothing but time.
No other correspondence has been submitted.
Thank you, sir. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to comment on the bylaw. So calling for first time, are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to get your attention
sorry,
before you did that. Just to clarify, in the Evetinks letter, the second to last bullet read that they hoped a marina would be disallowed, and you read it out as allowed. So just so that the public understands that they aren't proposing that a marina be.
No, he said no.
No, he said allowed, and it read disallowed.
Okay,
Just
thank you
to
for that clarity.
clarify that.
Okay. Get so used to seeing you guys on the Zoom screen there, so you guys to my left to right. Okay, so calling for first-time speakers. Hearing and seeing none. Asking the clerk, are there any members of the public that wish to speak on Zoom?
We currently have no attendance on Zoom.
0 attendance, okay. Second-time speakers. Calling for a second time, are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Yeah, help yourself.
Barbara Schramm, 1958 Bay Street, on behalf of the Wild Pacific Trail Society. You heard my letter, but I just want to highlight, it's a wonderful, wonderful natural area, but it's also extremely vulnerable. Footprints take literally years to heal. So I'm very concerned at a projected density of, I forgot, many hundreds of people being proposed for this land. I think incredible care should be taken because visitors do not understand. They just think they want to get their rowboats drug across the mud flats and will definitely create environmental damage. So I guess I would encourage council to restrict occupancy before there can be safeguards put in place. So temporary use should be counted as occupancy in my mind. So barriers, fences, educational signage, things like that should be in place even for temporary occupancy, in my opinion, because anybody living there is a person who could do damage. Other than that, the Trail Society is very happy to work together with the district and with the landowner to create a trail network as long as it connects to an exit on both ends of that trail. We're not keen for any dead-end trails that just serve the campground. Not. So it would need to connect to the ancient cedars and flow all the way through and out to lands beyond so that people are continued to just keep walking and not try and use that area for recreation. So I just wanted to highlight those points and offer a cooperation and hope for a good future on that property.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Calling for a second time for any speakers on Zoom.
There are currently no attendees on Zoom.
Thank you. And calling for a third and final time, are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Hearing, seeing none. And for a third time, are there anybody on Zoom wanting to speak? There's nobody on, you said?
Currently, there's no one on Zoom.
Okay. Should I wait the 60 seconds, or should I?
I think you're supposed to.
Okay, no problem.
In the habit.
60 seconds here.
Stitching time.
Yeah, it's all good, it's all good.
Are we there yet?
Don't be like that.
Still want the music. Or the little turning.
Yeah. Circle it out.
Yeah.
Okay. And nothing's changed for you?
Still no members on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on to the next one. Item 6.5. This item of business is District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1256, 2019. This bylaw is a general text amendment to District of Ucluelet zoning bylaw 1160, which adds a new zoning and regulatory section specific to campgrounds. I now invite Mr. Gregg to provide an overview of the bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. In general terms, the purpose of this Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1256, 2019 is to amend the zoning bylaw currently by adding a new zoning for campgrounds and to add a regulatory section specific to campgrounds. The specific campground zone will allow properties designated as CG campground to be used only for that use and to set specific lot regulations for density, setbacks, and heights. The proposed campground regulatory section of the zoning bylaw will also give a supplemental regulatory framework for such items as internal roads, washrooms, and showers and their requirements. The full text of the bylaw is found starting on page 329 of the public hearing agenda and is also online.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Now invite staff to read any unpublished correspondence related to the bylaw.
Just checking emails.
Okay.
There is no unpublished correspondence related to this bylaw.
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to comment on the bylaw. Calling for first time. Are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Barb, come on. Counting on you. Okay. For the clerk, are any members of the public on Zoom that wish to speak?
There are currently no attendees on Zoom.
Thank you. Second time, calling a second time. Are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? And are there any members on the public on the Zoom that wish to speak? Still zero attendance?
Still zero.
Okay. And calling for a third and final time, are there any members of the public in person that wish to speak? Hearing and seeing none. And last time to the clerk. Anybody on Zoom?
Currently no attendees by Zoom.
Okay, we'll do this 60-second thing.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I
It's
appreciate
nice
it, you
to see
too.
new faces.
Bye.
Take care. It was nice they showed up.
It's nice to see humans.
You're very happy, Richard.
Surely we're there now.
It's like when you're at the dentist and they make you gurgle that for a minute, right?
Do you remember Sarah's thing when we were doing the vagina monologues? Like how long 60 seconds were?
Okay. Time's up. I just want to confirm, Nicole, there's nothing there? Nobody's...
That's correct. We have no attendees on Zoom.
Thank you. And nothing's changed for you, Mr. Rodenberg? I declare the public hearing for the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw numbers 1267, 2020, 1244, 2019, and 1256, 2019 closed. Okay. We are now going to go to legislation 7.1. We have a recommendation on this one. Anybody like to start? Councillor McEwen?
I will move recommendation 1 that District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1267, 2020 be given third reading.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No, that's one.
We don't have to say anything about the access or anything like that.
Well, you can make a comment if you'd like to make a comment. Well, I'll start that for you, because it was interesting to hear the comments of Wild Pacific Trail. The reality, I guess, is someone could submit any kind of plans, and if your property T-bones along the Wild Pacific Trail, as much as the Wild Pacific Trail may not like to see that, I don't know if you can actually hinder that. And that's my question to you, Mr. Greg. We're allowed to ask questions now. But there's nothing to prevent a landowner, whether it's this one or an existing landowner, to making a cute little trail to the Wild Pacific Trail.
Through your worship, they could build a trail on their land unless there's a covenant saying, no, they're not going to do that on their land up to their property line, but then it's parkland. So that trail sits within a section of our park. We do not need to let them build a trail within the park, or 20 trails to the park. So that really is where it becomes a park management issue.
So there's a no-go zone in between the property and the trail anyways?
The trail, as it goes by Odyssey Lane, there, it goes through a swath of public land that we own that is park.
Okay.
No one has a right to build within our parks, whether it was on a playing field or by the trail.
So
we're covered.
So we have control.
So there's
it's a
no point
it's a
in
non-issue.
saying anything because they could do what they want to do, but then there's no-fly zone anyways. Perfect, okay.
Perfect.
Correct.
Thank you for that.
But should we let them know that we would, that's the case?
I think we just did.
Okay, perfect.
I think you're good.
I'm good.
Yeah, no, you can't build a trail through public property without approval and right-of-ways and the rest of it, so.
I'm happy.
Okay.
And the owner seemed amenable to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
as well.
It's not the current owner, it's the next owner that we always worry about, right? So, but at the end of the day, we'll just go with good faith.
Yeah.
So, any further discussion on that one?
No.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. It looks like a good project. 7.2, District of Cluett zoning amendment bylaw number 1244, 2019, and District of Cluett zoning amendment bylaw number 1256, 2019 campgrounds. Third readings. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll move recommendation 1 that District of Euclid zoning amendment bylaw number 1244, 2019 be given third reading.
We'll just do them separately if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second?
Any discussion on that one? Councillor Hoare?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we had said that the rezoning wasn't going to happen until we had seen a sign-off by a qualified environmental professional on the restoration of the damaged property, and I would like to know if that exists.
Sensing this is a question. Through the mayor, this is third reading, and so there's also a covenant to be registered on the property before 4th. So yes, that would all come back at a future council meeting, that confirmation. And in the public hearing package, there is draft, or the copy of the covenant, which basically sets it to be this plan and spells out some further commitments. That would be why there's going to be a bit of a lag, I think, in this case between third reading and when it comes back for consideration of final adoption. And I would just note at that point also would be the time when we will also set up the various motions to actually issue the permits that you've now received public input on, and the development permits as well.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, I just want to thank Mr. Greg. I just always am going to be that person.
No, we need
that's
that.
asking
So
for
good.
that.
So good. Councillor Cole?
Mr. Gregg, I would just like to make sure that whatever we do today, I kind of want the points Mr. Fortune made to be addressed about the apparatus is a big deal. The road access in and off of Peninsula is a huge deal. I mean, the ambulance station is right there, and I already see how dumb it gets with the gas station and can you address his points and tell me how pertinent they are to what happens here in this moment?
Through the mayor, there's multiple steps of approvals here. So what's now you're considering is third reading of the zoning for that land use. There are excellent comments that have been put in, and so those sort of servicing, access, paving of the road, turning radius, all that, as I think has been mentioned in some of the staff reports, really at the subdivision stage, when they're subdividing the property to create a campground parcel and a guest house parcel, that includes review of all of that servicing, including roads. So what's been flagged is assessing the intersection with Peninsula, needs MOTI to sign off on, hey, how does that work for these uses and the expected volumes, the engineered design of the road itself and the turnaround, the plans that are there now aren't construction drawings, but they're accurate and good, but not 100%. So
lift
all of
station
that
as
would be
well?
done. They'd have to engineer for the lift station. How are they servicing those new lots with sewer, water, roads? All that is done as part of the subdivision process.
So we're okay
So-
with the grand
Concept.
subject, the grand concept, but the details we can still make sure are put into place as we go.
And these concerns have now been raised and noted, and in the staff report, we noted some of those same things, that they're gonna need to do the engineering on the road, the access, all of that as well. And specifically with the, as well, engineering, showing what is the access for emergency access within the campground. Those are, internal driveways.
As well as the other part about the preservation and when should the trail go in unless it can be, but it shouldn't be afterwards if there's already temporary use and blah, 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 and all of that.
Yes, and some of those are actually addressed in the covenant that's on the property. So there's as council will recall, there's a commitment. The owners have committed to providing a total of $60,000 towards building that first piece of trail and overlook to contain people so they don't go out on the bay. And there's a hook that the short-term campground can't be developed until the trail exists along the whole frontage. So this puts in place the zoning, which really sets it up for then that subdivision, and then they go build things on it. Third step down the road.
Did you have anything, Councillor McEwen? I have some general comments. I think it's great. I think we need to move this along. This has been dragging, this piece of property has been trying to get this concept going, and there are a lot of hoops for them still to jump through, like you all described. And I think getting this to the next stage, with the COVID Wild Pacific Trail, as much as we value what they're doing for the community. More recently, what we've done with the Spring Cove addition and adding these kind of amenities. When I see the green going through the property, I don't think anybody at this table or the staff will want to see a dead end trail. It'll be a free throw trail. Obviously, conversations when we're talking like Peninsula Road with crosswalks, and I don't want to see us be like our neighboring community where you see families on the side of the road trying to cross there. So I think everything's timely with that. But and then with just the whole COVID conversation, with the desperate need of this, the whole camping scene is going to be, I think, in the next coming years, is going to be something that's becoming very more popular. And unfortunately, there are very limited options, and hence why there's a lot of backroom activities. You hear a lot of, even our district or bylaw, people, they can't even give someone $50 to park somewhere. So I'm not saying that's why, but it's very timely. And I think it's checking off a lot of boxes. The environmental factor. We continue to talk about the mud flats, and you'll need mud flaps if you go through there. But so it's nice to see something there. And in Mr. Fortune's comments, obviously he's had a road which has been left for himself, so it's changing as well, right? And I respect his comments, and they're well noted. And we'll look forward for the applicant to continue down this path. So, I'm very supportive of this. So, we had a seconder on that, and we discussed it. Is there any other comments? No? Okay, we'll call that to question. So, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
And I'll move recommendation 2 that the District of Euclid zoning amendment bylaw number 1256, 2019 be given third reading.
Second.
Second by Councillor McEwen. Any further discussion on that one? Okay, hearing, seeing none. So, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any other business? You just emotional check. It is emotional check. That's all you're doing. I got it. Okay. Anyways, so we're adjourned. Thank you.
Look at that. An hour, not even an hour.